Hey, welcome to Invent Academy. Today we're going to go over Invent Academy's Intro to Basic Sculpting in Blender. It's your instructor Faye again. This time, fun fact, place I really want to travel to, Iceland. Just look at that. Just look at those northern lights and starry background. Really cool place. All right, on our agenda today, we are going to go over some sculpting. And the pictures below, we have Doctor Strange and a couple of dragons, just some examples of really cool things you can create with sculpting in Blender. And to do those, we're going to look at some of the tools that make this possible, such as the brush settings, the Subdivision modifier, the sculpting tools, Symmetry, and Dentopo. All right, so before we look at brush settings, we're going to open up Blender. And when we usually open up Blender, we've been going into this general file, but this time we're going to go to sculpting, and that will open us with a sphere right here that's already more detailed, so we can sculpt with more ease. And so this left hand panel is a lot of the different brushes you can use. The most basic one is the draw, but some features that they all share in common is that they all have this radius and the strength modifier. Radius is essentially the size of the brush, and then strength is how apparent it is when you draw. So like right now, this is 50% strength. If I have 100% strength, it's much higher. And then, yes. And then another thing we're going to look at is the Subdivision modifier. And then this is essentially a way to up the detail. And say you have another object and then you want to bring it into the sculpting, but you want it to have more detail to sculpt with, you can give it a modifier. It'll look a lot better. So if I want to add an object, it's easier to go back to general layout mode to do this. I'm just gonna Shift A to add another mesh. It'll be a torus this time. G to bring it out. And you can see right now the detail of this is quite low. And what I can do is add a modifier in the Tools panel here, and then go to Add Modifier, Subdivision Surface. So what this does is it subdivides the surface into many more vertices and edges. And make sure you're in Catmull Clark, and you can up the level views to something that you're satisfied with. This looks smooth, but in reality, the number of vertices is still the same. Still, if you want something smoother to work with, this is a good alternative. So now if I go back to sculpting, I can sculpt this, and then you can see the differences now. All right. Now we're just going to go over some of the basic draw tools. Got draw, inflate, crease, flatten, and snake hook. And we're going to take another look at them here. So another thing to take note is right now it looks like I can't achieve anything on the sphere, but make sure you have it selected. I can go into my scene collection and then click the quad sphere, and then that will select it. Or I can go back to object mode and then click this, and then go back to sculpt mode. And then now you should be able to see the changes. And so, say I were making a face, and I wanted it to be symmetrical. Well, I have some options. I could try my best and draw on both sides. However, that's not very efficient. Although this is a nice face, what I can do is I can go into the Symmetry modifier, which is found on the very top left corner, or top right, I mean, and then you can see X, Y, and Z. And so whatever axis I click here, that will give me a symmetry line there. So if I clicked X, whatever I do on one side, you can see the effects on the other. You can see the difference here. Maybe I should increase this a little bit, and then you can see the difference there. So that's symmetry, and then you can do that for any of the axes you want. But you may have noticed that whenever I'm drawing, say I draw on this again, the level of detail seems to be going down. And that is a problem because we want the level of detail to remain consistent. If I were to go into edit mode, you could see that the vertices here are being stretched out a lot more than back here. Here they are spaced much closer together, and the length between the edges and the vertices, the edges are much shorter here than here. These edges are much longer. And so the way to fix that is with Dentopo. So Dentopo is this very useful detail or feature of sculpting that allows you to control the size of the new edges and mesh that you're adding. For example, if I wanted to add new geometry, I want to make sure that I have Dentopo selected. And Dentopo, it can be found up here. Where is it hiding? Oh yes, I'm in edit mode right now. I have to go back to sculpt mode. So Dentopo right here, just make sure that you have it selected. And here it gives you detail size, and you have the refine method. We're just going to worry about detail size right now. So earlier before, we saw that the distance between the edges was quite large. That's 12 pixels. So if we were to shift this down to say 3 pixels or so, all of the new edges that all of the new features that we create now, so if I were to draw on this and then draw it again, the level of detail now remains much more consistent than what we saw before. You can see that the detail here is much higher than right here. It's much more spaced out. This is what we had before we had this Dentopo option selected. And you can only see that from object mode. Detail in edit mode, it goes away, as we just previously found out. And so say I want to get rid of this. Another brush you can use is the flatten brush. So I'm just gonna up the radius, up the strength. Say I want to flatten this. It's kind of like an erase tool if you want to think about it that way, but it's good for creating flat surfaces. Say you want to start over again. Some other useful tools here are, well, the draw tool is the most basic one. Other nice ones include the inflate tool. This is really good for adding new, say you want to like add some muscle here, you want to add some more geometry to this, maybe like pull it in some different ways. Yes, and then another useful one is the crease tool, and it does exactly what its name is. It's good at creasing. Say you want like a sharper edge, you can just move your brush around here. I'm gonna up the radius a little bit to make it more effective. And then now you can kind of make a border. Say I wanted these to look like eyes. You have that. Another fun one to use is the snake hook. And I like this because it like allows you to pull geometry out. You can pull it in different directions. It's fun for creating cool effects. Say you want like antlers or antenna. It's also useful, well, say if you want like a beard or some teeth here. Just fun to drag around the different shapes and see what you can create with it. Also, a cool trick I found with this, it's easy to add texture with the snake hook if you were to decrease the radius and the strength and then just drag your brush over. You can like create what looks like little scales. If you were like maybe painting the dragon or something, it's easy to create some cool scale-like texture or horn-like texture. So yeah, it's very easy to create and sculpt inside Blender. So after learning about that, another task we're going to give you is to create an alien species head. And so put your skill to the test. First, I would advise you to play around with some different brushes. Use the mirror so both sides of your bust are identical or not. But the idea here is to experiment and be creative. And so I can't wait to see what you guys can create. And thank you for watching this video, and I hope you guys stay with us for the next one as well.